It was one of those mornings that seemed to fall apart even before the sun had fully risen. Lena stood in her small living room, rocking her baby gently while trying to keep her own voice calm. She had barely slept the night before, and now her phone buzzed with the message she feared most. Her babysitter, the only person she trusted with her child while she worked, had suddenly fallen ill and could not come. For a moment, Lena just stared at the screen, hoping it was a mistake or maybe a dream. But it wasn't. She felt her chest tighten as she tried to breathe. Her job wasn't something she could risk. She had worked hard to get it, and even though the pay wasn't much, it kept her afloat. Every month, she stretched her salary to cover rent, food, diapers, and everything else her baby needed. Missing a day wasn't an option. She had already taken days off recently when the baby had a fever, and she knew the company was busy with a new project now. They needed everyone present. She looked down at her baby, who blinked up at her with sleepy eyes, unaware of the rush and panic around him. For a moment, she closed her eyes and held him close, wishing things were easier, but wishing didn't change anything. She had to move. She dressed quickly, choosing clothes that made her look presentable enough, even though she felt anything but. She packed a small bag for the baby, some diapers, a bottle, a blanket, her hands moving fast, but her mind heavy. As she strapped her baby into the stroller, she whispered softly, telling him everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure herself. The bus ride to work felt longer than usual. Every bump made the baby stir, and Lena kept checking to make sure he didn't start crying. People glanced at her as she entered the bus, some with tired eyes, others with curiosity, but she did her best to avoid any attention. She didn't want anyone to question her choices or ask her why she was taking a baby to an office. She just needed to get through the day. When she finally reached the tall building where she worked, she paused at the entrance. The lobby was quiet, polished, and far too formal for a small stroller carrying a tiny child. She felt her heartbeat quicken. What if someone complained? What if her boss got angry? What if they sent her home? She stood there for a long second, her hand resting gently on the stroller handle. Before pushing the door open, as she entered, the security guard looked up from his desk. He wasn't used to seeing employees arrive with babies, but he simply gave her a polite nod. Lena gave a small, nervous smile in return and continued toward the elevator. The baby let out a soft sound, just a tiny coo, but the echo in the large lobby made it seem louder. Inside the elevator, she pressed the button for her floor and watched the numbers climb. She whispered to her baby again, assuring him everything would be fine. She wasn't sure who she was trying harder to calm, him or herself. When the doors opened, she stepped out slowly. Some of her coworkers were already at their desks. A few looked up, surprised at the sight of her in the stroller. She offered an awkward smile, feeling her cheeks warm. One woman near the front desk raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Another coworker, a young man who usually joked around, gave her a soft smile and a quick nod, as if to say, "Don't worry." That small gesture made her feel a little lighter. She moved quietly toward her cubicle, hoping to blend in. The office wasn't huge, but it wasn't tiny either. But no matter how she tried, a baby in a stroller wasn't exactly invisible. She reached her desk and parked the stroller next to her chair. The baby shifted slightly under the soft blanket, but stayed calm. For a few minutes, Lena just sat there, trying to gather herself. She kept imagining her boss walking over, confused or even upset. She could already hear the words in her mind. This is a workplace, not a daycare. She sighed and rubbed her temple. She didn't want to cause trouble. She just didn't have any other choice today. She opened her laptop and tried to focus on her tasks. Emails were waiting, deadlines were approaching. Her team relied on her work for the project they were preparing for a client meeting. She knew she couldn't afford to fall behind. As she began typing, she glanced down occasionally to check on the baby, who was peacefully sucking on his thumb. But peace doesn't last long with babies. After about an hour, a small whimper came from the stroller. Lena froze. She prayed he would fall back to sleep, but the whimper turned into a soft cry. She reached down quickly, gently stroking his tiny hand. She whispered soothing words, hoping her coworkers wouldn't get disturbed. A few people looked over, some with curiosity, others with sympathy. She picked him up, holding him close while bouncing slightly in her chair. She tried to continue working with one hand, but it wasn't easy. Every time she clicked or typed, the baby moved, and she had to readjust. Sweat gathered on her forehead. She felt stretched thin, trying to be a worker and a mother at the same time. Her heart pounded every time she heard a sound behind her, fearing it would be her boss. Her friend from the design team quietly approached her desk with a small smile. "Rough morning?" she whispered. Lena nodded, her lips pressed tightly together. "If you need me to hold him for a minute, I can," the friend said softly. Lena felt a swell of gratitude but shook her head politely. She didn't want to be a burden. The morning dragged on. Every small noise the baby made felt louder to Lena than it probably was. She could hear phones ringing, printers running, people talking at their desks, but somehow the quiet fusses from her baby seemed like alarms only she could hear. At one point she tried giving him his bottle. She held him close and fed him while leaning back in her chair, hoping no one would notice too much. A few people passing by smiled warmly. One coworker even whispered, "He's adorable," which made Lena smile shyly. Still, her nerves were on edge. Around mid-morning, she heard footsteps approaching from the direction of the main office. She didn't want to look up. She hoped desperately that it wasn't her boss. Her heart hammered as the footsteps came closer. She kept her eyes on her screen, pretending to be absorbed in her work, but then she heard her name. She turned slowly, forcing a calm look on her face. Her boss stood there, not angry, but clearly curious. His eyes shifted from her to the baby in her arms. Lena felt her throat tighten. She tried to explain, her words shaky, but he simply raised his hand gently. Signaling her to slow down, he asked her what had happened that morning. She explained about the canceled babysitter and how she didn't know what else to do. Her voice cracked a little when she admitted she didn't want to miss work again. She looked down, embarrassed, expecting disappointment or a lecture. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, not saying anything right away. Lena waited, feeling her chest tighten. She wished she could disappear into her chair. The baby shifted again, quietly, as if sensing her nerves. She braced herself for whatever he was going to say, not knowing if this moment would change everything for her at work. The office around them seemed unusually silent, as if even the keyboards and ringing phones sensed something important was happening. And just like that, the moment stretched out, leaving Lena suspended between fear and hope, unsure what the next minute would bring. Lena sat frozen in her chair, her baby resting quietly against her chest as she waited for her boss to say something. The soft hum of the office surrounded them, but it all felt far away. She could feel her heartbeat in her ears, louder than anything else in the room. Her boss stood still for a moment, looking at the baby with a calm expression that Lena couldn't quite read. She prepared herself for the worst, bracing for the words she feared he might say. Instead, he adjusted his glasses slightly and spoke in a steady voice. He didn't sound upset or frustrated, just sounded human. He asked Lena calmly if the baby had everything he needed for the day. The question caught her off guard, and she blinked, unsure how to respond. She managed a small nod and tried to explain again, her voice soft and shaky. She apologized for the disruption, apologized for bringing a child to the workplace, apologized for everything she felt guilty about. But her boss held up his hand gently, stopping her. He told her not to worry. He told her he understood that life sometimes doesn't go as planned, and he reminded her that she had always been reliable in her work. These words eased a little of the weight pressing on her shoulders. She felt a tightness in her chest loosen, even if only slightly, but she still felt embarrassed, still unsure. She asked him if he wanted her to go home, ready to pack up her things if he said yes. He shook his head, told her she didn't need to leave, that she could stay and work, and that the company would manage for the day. The simple kindness in his voice surprised her. She wasn't used to moments like this. In her experience, workplaces were strict, structured, and unbending. But here he was, showing her a kind of grace she hadn't expected. As he walked away, Lena let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding for so long. Her baby shifted softly in her arms, and she rocked him gently, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over her. She settled him back into the stroller and wiped her eyes quickly before anyone noticed. The rest of the office slowly returned to normal. Though Lena could still feel the quiet attention of a few coworkers, some offered warm smiles when they passed by her desk. Others seemed unsure how to react, but no one complained. No one made her feel out of place. It was as if the simple approval from the boss had set the tone for everyone else. Lena tried her best to focus on her work again. She clicked through emails, sorted documents, and answered messages while checking on the baby every few minutes. He was mostly calm, occasionally making small sounds that made her heart skip with worry. But each time she soothed him gently. Around mid-morning, the office felt busier as people prepared for an upcoming meeting. Lena could hear discussions from nearby desks, the rustling of papers and the tapping of keyboards. She tried to keep her breathing steady and her thoughts organized. She kept reminding herself that she could get through the day, even if it felt overwhelming. But then the baby began to fuss again, a little louder this time. Lena felt her nerves spike. She gently picked him up and tried comforting him, swaying slightly from side to side. She whispered softly, humming a tune she hoped would calm him. A coworker walked by and offered a reassuring smile, but after a few minutes, the fussing turned into small cries. Lena felt panic rise in her chest. She reached for his bottle, hoping he was hungry. She warmed it quickly and fed him while holding him with practiced care. She whispered comforting sounds, pressing her cheek lightly against his tiny head. Eventually, he settled, and she let out a quiet sigh. When she looked up, she saw her boss again, but this time, he wasn't approaching her desk. He was walking toward the glass-walled conference room. A few people followed him, carrying papers and laptops. It was clear a meeting was about to begin. Lena prayed her child would stay quiet for at least the next hour, but babies have their own timing. Just as the meeting started, the baby stirred again. Lena tried to distract him with a small toy she kept in the diaper bag. She shook it gently, letting the soft sound catch his attention. For a moment, it worked, but then his tiny face scrunched up, and a cry escaped. It wasn't loud at first, but even the small sound echoed in her mind like a fire alarm. Her breath quickened. She knew the glass walls probably didn't block the sound entirely. She could see the movement inside the meeting room, people focused on their discussion. She prayed her baby would settle, but his cries grew a little stronger. Lena stood up slowly, holding him close. She tried to shush him, bouncing slightly as she walked toward a quieter corner of the office. Her coworker from earlier stepped over and offered to help again, but Lena shook her head with a quick smile. She didn't want to inconvenience anyone. She kept pacing gently in the corner, patting her baby's back, whispering softly, trying to calm his growing frustration. He was tired, she could tell. He usually napped at this time. Her heart ached. She wished she could take him somewhere peaceful, somewhere quiet, but she was still at her workplace. And even though her boss had been kind, she didn't want to push her luck. Finally, after several minutes, the baby began to settle. His cries softened into small whimpers before his eyes finally fluttered closed. Lena held him for a moment longer, making sure he was truly asleep, before gently laying him back in the stroller. She let out another long breath. She walked back to her desk and sat down carefully, feeling drained but grateful. She glanced toward the conference room, nervous but curious. To her surprise, she saw her boss looking in her direction. He wasn't upset. His expression was neutral, almost thoughtful. She quickly turned back to her screen, embarrassed once again, when the meeting ended. She kept her head down as everyone walked out. Some of her coworkers peeked into the stroller and smiled at the sleeping baby. A few whispered kind words as they passed by. And Lena found comfort in knowing at least some people understood. A few minutes later, her boss approached again. She straightened in her chair, unsure what to expect this time. He folded his hands loosely as he spoke. He asked her if she needed a private space for the baby to rest without distraction. She felt caught off guard again. She didn't know such an option existed. He pointed to his office, explaining that she was welcome to use it for the day if it made things easier. He said he could work in the small lounge area nearby. Lena felt her eyes widen. She quickly shook her head, insisting she didn't want to take his office. But he gave her a reassuring smile. He told her the company wasn't just a place of work. It was a place where people helped one another. He said he believed in supporting employees when life got complicated. The words touched her more deeply than she expected. She wasn't used to kindness at this level. She had spent years navigating jobs where she felt replaceable or invisible, but today was different. The compassion in her boss's voice made her feel acknowledged, seen, and valued. He urged her gently to take the offer. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. She thanked him quietly and carefully pushed the stroller toward the office. Her boss stepped aside, holding the door open for her. She entered the small but tidy room, grateful for the chance to give her baby a more peaceful space. Inside, she closed the blinds halfway to dim the light. She placed her baby gently in the stroller and rocked it softly. He stayed asleep, breathing evenly. She sat on the small sofa near the wall and took a moment to breathe deeply. The quiet felt like a relief. After a few minutes, she gathered herself and opened her laptop again. She began working with a focus she hadn't felt all morning. She answered emails more quickly, arranged documents, and drafted a few reports. The silence helped her regain her rhythm. Every so often, she looked at her baby to make sure he was still comfortable. Each time she saw him sleeping peacefully, she felt grateful for the kindness that allowed them both to have this moment. She worked steadily for over an hour before hearing a soft knock. Her boss poked his head in, asking if everything was all right. Lena nodded and thanked him again. He simply smiled and told her to let him know if she needed anything else. Then he walked away. As the afternoon went on, the office buzzed with the usual activity. People moved in and out, phones rang, and keyboards clicked. But inside the small office space, Lena felt oddly calm. She was tired, yes, but things felt manageable now. During lunch, a coworker brought her a sandwich and a small drink, saying she figured Lena might not have had time to get anything. Lena thanked her with genuine warmth. She hadn't eaten since early morning and was grateful for the thoughtful gesture. When the baby finally woke up, he stretched slowly and blinked at the quiet room. Lena smiled softly and picked him up. He didn't cry this time. He simply rested against her shoulder while she finished her last tasks of the hour. Later, when she returned to her desk, she found a few people gathered nearby, chatting quietly. They greeted her warmly and asked if the day was going any better. She nodded and shared a small smile, feeling a bit more comfortable than earlier. The afternoon passed more smoothly. She balanced her work with caring for her baby, switching between typing and soothing, emailing and rocking. It wasn't easy, but it was manageable. And most importantly, she didn't feel alone. Her boss checked in 2 more times before the day ended, each time ensuring she had what she needed. Every small act of kindness made her feel more secure. She started to realize that maybe she wasn't as alone in her challenges as she had always believed. As the workday neared its end, she began packing her things slowly. She felt tired, but relieved. What had started as a chaotic and almost heartbreaking morning had turned into a day she would never forget. She took one last look around the office, feeling grateful for the support she had received. She knew she still had challenges ahead. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but today had reminded her that good people still existed. She left the building with her baby in tow, the cool air touching her face as she stepped outside. For the first time in a long time, she felt a small sense of hope warming her chest. She didn't know that this day, this simple day at work, was just the beginning of something much bigger. Something she could never have imagined. The next morning arrived earlier than Lena wished. Her eyes opened slowly, heavy from the long night. Her baby had woken up a few times, needing to be fed and comforted, and she hadn't gotten nearly enough rest. Still, she knew she had to get up. Work didn't slow down just because she was tired. She stretched her arms carefully, not wanting to wake the baby who was finally sleeping peacefully beside her. For a moment, she just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous day. The kindness she had experienced still felt unreal. She had expected frustration, complaints, maybe even punishment, but instead, she had been met with understanding, patience, and support. It was something she was still trying to wrap her mind around. Her thoughts drifted to her boss's reaction. The way he listened. The way he didn't judge her. The way he offered help in such a simple but meaningful way. She felt grateful, deeply grateful. But a small part of her also worried. What if today was different? What if yesterday was just a rare moment of grace? She didn't want to take advantage of anyone's kindness. She got up carefully and checked on her baby. He stirred a little, stretching his small arms before settling again. Lena smiled softly. She knew she needed a plan. Today couldn't unfold like yesterday. She didn't want to cause disruption again. She needed a way to keep her baby comfortable and quiet. She quickly prepared a bottle, packed extra diapers, grabbed 2 small toys, and added a thin blanket in case the office felt cold. She double-checked everything, wanting to avoid any last-minute panic. She dressed her baby in a soft onesie and kissed his forehead gently. The morning rush was familiar fast, stressful but necessary. She moved with purpose, even through her exhaustion, making sure she didn't fall behind schedule. The bus ride felt longer again, but she held her baby close, rocking him gently when he made small sounds. When she reached the office building, she took a deep breath before pushing the door open. The lobby felt the same, as always quiet, polished, and bright. But her heart wasn't racing the same way it had the day before. She greeted the security guard with a small smile, and he nodded warmly. A simple exchange, but enough to ease her nerves. She stepped into the elevator, holding the stroller with one hand. As the doors opened on her floor, she heard the familiar sounds of work. Phones ringing, people talking softly, keyboards clicking. When she walked into the office, some of her coworkers greeted her with friendly smiles. The tension she had felt yesterday wasn't there today. She parked the stroller near her desk once again. Her baby was awake now, staring at the overhead lights with wide eyes. Lena gave him a gentle smile and adjusted his blanket before turning on her computer. Within minutes, her boss walked through the office, greeting everyone as he usually did. When he reached Lena's desk, he paused for a moment. She looked up quickly, offering a small smile. He asked how her morning was going. She replied that everything was fine and that she hoped the baby wouldn't be a distraction today. He reassured her again, telling her not to worry. Then he continued on his way. The simple exchange helped Lena relax. She focused on work, typing emails, and finishing tasks from the day before. She felt more confident now, more settled. Her baby was calm too, quietly watching the room around him. Around mid-morning, the office had a different energy. People seemed more cheerful, talking in small groups, sharing ideas for an upcoming presentation. Lena worked steadily, pausing now and then to check on her baby. He reached out toward one of the small toys she packed, squeezing it softly. A coworker passed by and paused for a moment. She leaned in closer to the stroller and whispered, "He looks even calmer today." Lena smiled gratefully. She hoped it stayed that way. But babies always bring surprises. As she began working on a report, she heard a soft whine coming from the stroller. Her baby shifted restlessly. She picked him up and rocked him gently, whispering to him. For a few minutes it worked. He relaxed against her shoulder. Then the door to the office opened, and a sudden burst of laughter from a group entering startled him. He started crying loud enough to turn heads. Lena felt her heart leap in her chest. She bounced him gently, humming softly. The crying continued, growing louder and more insistent. Her coworkers glanced over with sympathetic expressions. Lena tried everything she could think of, rocking, patting his back, whispering, bouncing lightly. But he wouldn't settle. She could feel her own eyes burning, her throat tightening. She didn't want this to happen again. She didn't want to disrupt everyone. Her boss stepped out of his office when he heard the crying. He approached slowly, not rushing, not alarmed. When he reached her desk, he asked gently if she needed a hand. The kindness in his tone made her eyes water, though she tried to hide it. She began apologizing again, but he stopped her with a soft shake of his head. He offered his office once more, saying it might help the baby rest. This time she didn't hesitate. She thanked him and wheeled the stroller quickly into the quiet room. Inside, she closed the door halfway and sat on the sofa as she cradled her baby. She rocked him for several minutes, whispering softly until his cries slowly melted into small whimpers. Finally, he fell asleep again. Lena let out a small sigh of relief, leaning back onto the sofa as she held him. She sat there quietly, watching his tiny eyelids flutter as he dreamed. She felt tired emotionally, physically, but also deeply grateful. No one had judged her. No one had made her feel out of place. Instead, people had shown her patience and kindness. She rested for a few minutes before placing him gently in the stroller. Then she returned to her desk to continue working. Her boss walked by later and nodded at her with a warm smile, checking in without saying a word. As the afternoon approached, something unexpected happened. A coworker from the media team approached her desk holding a phone. She asked Lena if she had seen a photo that was going around. Lena frowned, confused. The coworker then turned her phone toward her. On the screen was an image taken the day before. Her boss was holding her baby in his arms while talking to two employees. His expression was calm and focused, as if holding a child during work was the most natural thing in the world. Someone in the office must have taken the photo quietly. Lena felt her face warm with embarrassment. She didn't expect anyone to take pictures, let alone share them. But the coworker assured her it wasn't posted in a negative way. In fact, the photo was spreading quickly online, and people were praising the moment. Lena blinked, stunned. Why would people care so much? But the more she listened, the more she realized something important. People were moved by the simple act of kindness. Her boss had shown, throughout the office. Whispers began spreading as more coworkers saw the photos. Some showed her their phones, pointing to comments from people who admired the compassion in the image. Lena felt overwhelmed. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She didn't know how to process it. Her boss eventually learned about the photo when several employees showed it to him. He walked over to Lena's desk with a calm but slightly surprised expression. He wasn't upset, he seemed more curious than anything. He asked her if she was all right with the attention. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. She wasn't sure how to feel yet, but she appreciated the fact that he cared enough to ask. He explained that, while he hadn't expected the moment to be shared publicly, he didn't mind it. He said that if it helped people understand the importance of supporting parents in the workplace, then maybe it wasn't such a bad thing. The words struck Lena deeply. She had never once imagined that her struggle, her simple, desperate decision to bring her baby to work could touch so many people. But now, everywhere she looked, people were talking about compassion, understanding, support. Throughout the afternoon, the photo continued spreading. By lunch, it had been shared hundreds of times. By early afternoon, thousands. Comments poured in from people around the world saying how much they admired the gesture, how they wished more workplaces were supportive, how the moment reminded them of their own struggles. Coworkers kept stopping by her desk to tell her how meaningful the moment felt. Some of them spoke quietly, sharing their own experiences as parents or caregivers. One woman admitted she once had to miss an important meeting because of childcare issues and had felt terrible about it for weeks. Another man shared how he had once been afraid to tell his boss that his child was sick. Hearing their stories made Lena realize something she hadn't noticed before. So many people struggled silently, afraid to be judged or punished. And this one photo, this accidental, simple moment had somehow opened a door for people to talk openly. Her boss, Emal, handled the growing attention with calm confidence. When a reporter emailed the company asking for a comment, he politely declined to make it about himself. Instead, he said the focus should be on supporting workers who are doing their best. Later in the day, he stopped by Lena's desk again. He told her that if the attention became overwhelming, she could step away for a bit. He suggested she use his office to take a break if needed. His tone was gentle and sincere. Lena thanked him again, her voice quiet. She felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, surprise, relief, and even disbelief. She never thought a difficult morning could turn into something so meaningful. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. People kept stopping by to congratulate her, to offer help, or to simply express their support. Her baby woke up a few more times, but he stayed relatively calm. Every time he made a small sound, someone in the office smiled as the afternoon sun melted into the evening light. Lena packed up her things, preparing to go home. Her boss walked up to her just as she was leaving. He told her to take her time tomorrow and that she didn't have to rush in early. He gave her a reassuring smile, reminding her that the company cared about her well-being. Lena stepped outside with her baby resting peacefully in the stroller. The air was cool, brushing gently against her cheeks. She felt a strange blend of exhaustion and hope. She walked slowly toward the bus stop, thinking about everything that had happened. The photo, the attention, the kindness, the support of it felt real yet. But she knew one thing for certain. Something had shifted. Not just in her life, but maybe in the lives of many others too. What had started as a moment of panic had turned into something she never expected. And she had no idea that the days ahead would bring even bigger changes. Lena woke up the next morning feeling like her phone was vibrating nonstop. At first she thought it was her alarm malfunctioning. But when she reached for it, she saw dozens of notifications and messages lighting up her screen. She rubbed her eyes, still half asleep, and tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Her heart raced a little, unsure if something bad had happened. After everything that had gone on the day before, she wasn't sure she could handle any more surprises. The first message she opened was from a coworker who wrote, "You need to check the company page. Something crazy happened." Lena blinked twice and sat up, hoping it wasn't something about her baby or the boss carrying him. She remembered someone taking a picture, but she thought it was just for fun inside the office. She hadn't expected it to go anywhere. She clicked on the link her coworker sent her and waited for the page to load. When the picture finally appeared, she froze. It showed her boss standing in the middle of the office, holding her baby gently in one arm while pointing at a document on a screen with his free hand. He looked calm, focused, and completely at ease, holding the baby. The image looked almost staged, like it came from a movie scene about kindness at work. But she knew it was real because she had seen it with her own eyes. Someone had captured the moment perfectly. The comments under the photo were growing by the second. People were writing about how touching the scene was, how rare it was to see a boss so caring, how refreshing it was to see a workplace that supported parents. Some people shared stories of times they had no childcare and were scolded or punished for it. Others wrote about how much they wished their companies were the same. There were thousands of reactions already, and the number kept climbing. Lena held her phone close, unsure how to feel. She felt grateful, embarrassed, overwhelmed, and emotional all at once. She had never imagined that a rough day would turn into something people all over the internet were talking about. She took a deep breath and scrolled through more comments, some from strangers, some from old friends who hadn't talked to her in years. They all saw the picture and recognized her child. Her best friend sent her a message saying, "Lena, your boss is the nicest man alive. This is going viral everywhere." Another friend wrote, "This made me cry. I'm so proud of you." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them with the back of her hand and looked over at her baby still sleeping quietly in his crib. All of this because she had no choice but to bring him to work. After a moment, Lena finally got up and made coffee. She needed to calm her nerves before going to work again. She kept wondering if her boss had seen the photo and what he thought about it. She hoped it wasn't causing problems for him. He didn't do any of that for attention. He did it because he cared and she needed help. She didn't want anyone to twist the situation or make it look like something it wasn't. When she arrived at the office, people were already talking. The whole place buzzed with excitement. Some coworkers greeted her with warm smiles, some offered hugs, and others just waved, unsure what to say. She walked slowly toward her desk, trying not to attract more attention than she already had. Her boss walked out of his office just as she turned the corner. He spotted her immediately. She gave him a shy smile, not sure what he would say. He walked toward her, hands in his pockets, expression calm as always. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," Lena replied. Clutching her bag, he glanced around at the curious faces nearby before asking her quietly, "Are you doing okay?" "I imagine it's been a busy morning for you?" Lena nodded. "I didn't know the photo would end up online. I'm so sorry if it caused trouble." His eyes softened. "You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. And honestly, I'm glad people are talking about it. It's starting conversations we should have been having anyway." She looked at him, surprised. He seemed completely comfortable with all the attention. Instead of worrying about his image, he was thinking about the bigger picture. She felt herself relax later that day. The company's HR manager sent out a brief message reminding everyone to respect privacy. Even though the situation was now public, but by then, the story had already spread beyond the company page. A well-known local news outlet had shared the photo too. They added a short caption about a supportive boss helping a struggling working mother. The post spread even faster. People began tagging each other, saying things like, "This is what leadership looks like, and more workplaces should be like this." The comment section filled with parents sharing their own challenges. Some even tagged their employers jokingly at lunch. Lena sat with a few coworkers who had known her since she first joined the company. They asked if she was okay and whether the attention felt stressful. She admitted that it did. But she also said she was touched by how much kindness people were showing. One coworker told her, "You didn't just go viral. You opened people's eyes." This might change things here. Lena didn't know about that, but she hoped it was true. In the afternoon, the boss held a short meeting. Everyone gathered around, some still whispering about the photo. He waited for the room to quiet down before speaking. His voice was calm but firm. "I want to say something about yesterday," he began. "What happened wasn't planned, and the photo wasn't meant to become public. But now that it has, I want everyone to understand something. Supporting each other isn't just something nice to do. It's part of who we should be, not just as coworkers, but as human beings." People nodded, listening closely. He continued, "Some of us have families. Some of us care for children, parents, or siblings. All of us face moments in life when we need help. We shouldn't be scared to ask for it. And we shouldn't be afraid of losing our jobs because life got difficult for a day." Lena felt her chest tighten with emotion. She didn't expect him to speak so openly, and just to be clear. He added with a gentle smile, "Holding a baby is not the hardest part of my day. It's probably the easiest." The room erupted in laughter. Even Lena laughed, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. After the meeting, the atmosphere in the office changed. People seemed more relaxed, more connected. Some walked up to Lena again and told her they admired her strength. A few colleagues shared their own stories about struggling with childcare or balancing work and home. One man even mentioned he once had to hide his toddler in a conference room just so he wouldn't get in trouble. Throughout the day, Lena felt waves of gratitude. She knew not everyone was lucky enough to have a job where someone understood their situation, let alone a boss who literally carried their baby so they could finish important work. She didn't take the moment lightly. It felt like something meaningful was happening. Later that evening, as she left work with her baby in her arms, she noticed two strangers waiting outside the building with cameras. They were from a local news channel. They asked if she was the mother from the viral photo. She froze for a moment, unsure what to do. Before she could answer, her boss stepped outside behind her. He gently moved forward and told the reporters that Lena needed privacy and wasn't obligated to do any interviews. His voice was calm but firm. The reporters backed off politely, and Lena gave him a grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to talk to anyone if you don't want to," he said. "Your story is yours," she nodded, holding her baby close. As she walked to her car, she felt tears of relief forming in her eyes. She wasn't alone in this. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't just a stressed-out employee trying to make ends meet. She was someone people cared about. When she got home, she put her baby to sleep and sat down with a warm cup of tea. The day had been emotionally overwhelming, but also strangely beautiful. She scrolled through more comments online, some from people across the world saying the photo brought them hope. Hope. That was a word she hadn't felt in a long time. Before going to bed, she looked at her baby and whispered, "One day you'll see this, and I hope it reminds you that kindness still exists." She turned off the light, climbed into bed, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be another day, maybe just as busy, maybe just as overwhelming. But tonight, she allowed herself to rest. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt like things were going to be okay, and in her heart, she knew the story wasn't over yet. Tomorrow would bring new conversations, new changes, maybe even new opportunities. But whatever happened next, she felt ready. Not because everything was perfect, but because she finally felt supported. And sometimes, that alone was enough to change everything. The next morning felt different for Lena, almost like she woke up in a new world. Not because anything magical had happened overnight, but because the atmosphere around her had changed in a way she couldn't fully explain. When she opened her eyes, the first sound she heard was her baby babbling softly in his crib. She smiled and walked over to pick him up. Holding him close, she whispered, "We made it through another day." She didn't know exactly what the day ahead would bring, but for the first time in a while, she didn't feel scared of it. As she got ready for work, her phone buzzed again with messages, but she didn't feel overwhelmed this time. Some were from friends, some from coworkers, and some from strangers who had found her contact through social media and wanted to thank her for unintentionally starting a conversation that mattered. She didn't respond to everyone, but she read many of them slowly, smiling at their kindness. Once they were ready, she placed her baby gently into his carrier and headed out the door. The morning air was cool, and she breathed deeply, hoping the day would be peaceful. Her only wish was to do her job without too much attention. She hoped the media would forget about the photos soon. But deep down, she also hoped that the conversation wouldn't stop. Not because she wanted the spotlight, but because she knew there were many parents out there struggling the same way she had been. When she arrived at work, things seemed calmer than the previous day. A few people smiled at her, but no one rushed over with questions. The office felt warm and familiar, like a place where she belonged. She walked to her desk and set her things down slowly. Her boss waved at her from across the room and gave her a reassuring nod. She liked that he didn't make a big deal out of anything. It helped her breathe easier. Later in the morning, the company held a small meeting in one of the larger rooms. When everyone gathered, the boss stood in front of them with a thoughtful look on his face. He waited until the room was quiet before he began speaking. "I want to talk about something important today," he said. "What happened these past few days has given us a chance to look at things differently. We've seen how one moment can spark conversations that were long overdue." People nodded, listening closely. He continued, "We all know that life is unpredictable. Sometimes things happen that throw our routines off balance. We shouldn't be punished for needing help. We shouldn't feel embarrassed for asking for understanding." As he spoke, Lena felt tears forming in her eyes again. She looked down at her hands, trying to keep her emotions steady. "And so," the boss said, "we are creating a new set of office policies focused on supporting our employees who have families or caregiving responsibilities." A quiet wave of excitement filled the room. People leaned in, eager to hear more. He went on to explain that they would introduce more flexible working hours, the option to work from home when needed, and designated days where employees could bring their children if childcare fell through. The company would also be setting up a small room in the building for parents to use a peaceful space where they could take care of their children if emergencies came up. When the meeting ended, people cheered softly, clapped, and even hugged each other. It wasn't just about Lena or her baby anymore. It was about everyone. The changes meant more than anyone could put into words. After the meeting, coworkers came up to Lena and thanked her, even though she kept insisting she didn't do anything on purpose. They told her the moment with the baby made them think about their own families, their own struggles, and their own needs. She felt humbled by their words, but also encouraged. Around lunchtime, her boss called her into his office. She walked in, holding her baby in her arms because he had started fussing earlier. Her boss smiled and motioned for her to sit. "I know the last few days haven't been easy," he said gently. "I just want to make sure you're doing all right." She nodded. "I'm okay. Just surprised by all of this?" "That makes two of us," he said with a chuckle. "But I don't regret anything about what happened. I'm glad the moment was captured. And I'm glad people are talking. It's helped us grow as a company." Lena breathed in slowly, grateful for his honesty. "Thank you for everything you've done," she said. "I know you didn't have to do any of it. Helping you wasn't extra work. It was the right thing to do. And the truth is, you've always been dedicated to your job. You've worked through challenges most people don't see. You deserve support." She looked at her baby, then back at him. "I just hope this helps people outside the company too," she said softly. "So many parents out there struggle like this." "I hope so too," he replied. "And maybe, in some small way, this moment will inspire other places to do better." By the afternoon, the office felt more alive than usual. People were chatting, sharing ideas, and even discussing ways they could make their work environment more family-friendly. Lena found herself talking to coworkers she had barely spoken to before. Some shared their own stories about raising children or taking care of sick family members. They talked about how hard it had been to balance everything. For the first time, they felt like they could talk openly without fear. Later in the day, another local news outlet reached out to the company, asking if they could do a short interview. This time, the boss asked Lena if she felt comfortable participating. She thought about it for a moment. The idea made her nervous, but she also knew that this whole experience wasn't just about her. It was about people like her, so she agreed. The interview was simple. She talked about how she had struggled that morning when her babysitter canceled. She talked about her fears of losing her job and how she brought her baby to work as a last resort. She explained how surprised she had been when her boss stepped in to help without judgment. She didn't try to make the story sound bigger than it was. She just spoke honestly. The reporter asked her what message she wanted people to take away from the moment. She thought about it before answering. "I want people to understand that parents aren't asking for special treatment," she said. "We're just asking for a little understanding when life becomes difficult. A little kindness can change everything for someone." When the interview aired, people reacted with even more warmth. Many said they wished they had someone like her boss in their lives. Some shared stories of times they felt unsupported. Others said they hoped their workplaces would pay attention to what was happening and start thinking differently. By the end of the week, something incredible happened. A large company from another city reached out to Lena's workplace, asking for guidance on creating a more supportive environment for their own employees. Then, another company reached out. And another. It didn't take long before the story became part of a bigger movement. People were talking about work-life balance, childcare challenges, and the importance of supportive workplaces. Small conversations turned into big ones. And it all started with one mother who had no other choice but to bring her baby to work. One evening, as Lena prepared dinner, her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen and saw a message from the boss. It was simple but meaningful. "I want you to know," it read, "you helped make this change possible. Thank you for being brave." She smiled, her eyes filling with emotion. She typed back a short message, "Thank you for believing in me." Before bed, she held her baby close and whispered, "You changed everything without even knowing it." She kissed his forehead and gently placed him in his crib. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the journey she had gone through in such a short time. She remembered how scared she had been the morning she brought her baby to work. She remembered thinking she might lose her job. She remembered how embarrassed she felt. But now she understood something important. Sometimes the moments that scare us the most lead to the most beautiful changes. She didn't know what the future would bring. But she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She felt supported. She felt valued. She felt seen. And most of all, she felt hopeful. As she closed her eyes and drifted to sleep, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a new chapter for her. For her baby, and for everyone whose lives had been quietly touched by a single act of kindness.